and I was taking a picture, and all of a sudden I felt this same hand, this same swinging arm, although we weren't walking, reach up, and it hit me right between my legs.
Hi everyone, it's Katy. Before this podcast starts, a quick note. This was a very difficult podcast for Tiffany and I to record, and it bothers me that this was something we had difficulty talking about. I think you'll see why. And another important note is we do swear in this podcast, and we do talk about sexually explicit things. Make sure you're not listening to it with people you wouldn't want to hear such things. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katy Sewall and Tiffany Parks. This is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewall.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
An ongoing conversation about what it's like to be an expat living in a foreign country. We're both in Rome. I'm here temporarily, so I'm the temporary point of view. I'm here for a year, and Tiffany is ongoing. She's been here for the last 10 years.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about experiences that we've had while traveling that have been a little bit less than savory, a little bit unpleasant.
If not downright awful, basically.
And scary.
Yes, very.
So when we finish, make sure to comment on, leave your experiences that you've had too.
Yes, you can email us at bittersweetlife@mail.com. And you can also visit us online at thebittersweetlife.net. And I know, .net, not cool. I get it. But, you know.
Well, we're very late. We're coming very late to this party.
Yes, I could have paid for the .com, but I didn't want to give some guy money just for owning the domain name. I didn't think that was fair, so we're .net.
So, do you want to start or should I?
You start because your story is better. You're bolder. I appreciate your action better.
Well, the truth is that I've told Katy my story before, but she has not told me hers because it just happened a few weeks ago. So I'll be as interested as you to hear what happened to her in Spain.
Yeah, so we'll have you go first just so you can raise the anticipation level.
All right. So I was in India in 2007 traveling on my own after a very, very bad breakup. And I was in the city of Agra. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to India, but if you have, you've probably been to Agra because that's where the Taj Mahal is. And with the exception of that incredibly beautiful building, Agra is a horrible, horrible place. As if you've been there, you surely know. And I was in the city. It was actually near the tail end of my trip. I'd been in India for about 5 weeks and really loved most of my experiences there. And I was at the Taj Mahal, and as I said, I was alone at that particular moment. And there were all of these people outside the Taj Mahal, Indian men, and they were sort of trying to sell themselves as tour guides. Now, a little aside is that I used to be a tour. I still am actually a tour guide on the side. I don't do it a lot anymore, but it used to be my main source of income. And when I first started out, I had my own sort of touters, as you might call them, who were sort of drumming up business from people just walking around tourist sites, drumming up business for me. So I kind of took a little bit of, I saw sort of a kindred spirit, if you will, in this man who was trying to make a buck by being a tour guide. And it was a very reasonable rate. I think he was asking me something like 50 rupees. I mean, it was something so small that I thought, even if all this guy does is take my picture, because I don't have anyone else to take my picture, it'll be worth it. So I say, okay. And he was a middle-aged man, probably in his 50s. And we walk inside, and his English was pretty good. So we're walking around the courtyard area, if you will, or the outside space. There's a large outside space with reflection ponds, if I remember right. It's been a while. But so we were walking around, and he was taking my picture in all those classic spots, and giving me a little bit of history, very basic, extremely basic history. I'd read all of it in my tour book already. He said, do you want to go into the Taj Mahal first, or do you want to go into the mosque first? Because there's a mosque on the left-hand side. And I thought, why don't I save the best for last? And let's go in the mosque first, and then we'll go in the Taj Mahal at the end. And I happened to notice that as we were walking around, every so often with his arm, he would sort of brush the side of my leg with his swinging arms, His arms were swinging. So technically, it could have been an accident. And I thought, whatever, this is just an accident. Now, obviously in India as well, I think if you're there for a long enough period of time, you start to sort of figure out how things work there, and you realize the very delicate relationship between men and women in India that's very different from how it is in the States. And I think I was on higher alert. Like if some random American guy accidentally brushed my leg with his fingers, I don't think I would get upset about it. But in India, there's a certain amount of respect that is expected towards a woman. And if you don't give her that respect, it's because you are looking at that woman as in a certain way. And is a very big deal in India. It's not like in America. So we're walking around and we go into the mosque. And he starts explaining to me some things. And he keeps sort of doing this every so often, brushing my leg. And I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed at that.
I mean, at first you must think that he's just accidentally knocking into you while you're walking.
Yeah, that's what I thought at first. And that's what women are taught to think. Women, I think, are really, whether, I'm not saying anybody teaches us this on purpose, but we end up thinking, oh, no, that's not what he means. Oh, don't be silly. Don't flatter yourself. He's not trying to, this is what we as women unfortunately often think. And so we go inside and he says to me, so over here, and he points to the side where there's a little gated sort of area. And I had been in India long enough and in enough mosques by that point to know that was the area where the women were allowed to be. And generally in a service, in a Muslim service, the women are not mixed up with the men. And so I knew that was the women's area. And he pointed over and he said, that area over there, wait, can I swear? I just realized that I can say a swear word, right?
You can. We just have to remember to label this one explicit.
Okay. He said, that is where they do the But he had a little bit of an accent, so I thought, no, definitely I didn't hear right. I turned to him and I said, what? And he said, yes, over there, that is where they do the with a little, mischievous grin on his face. And I thought to myself, well, first of all, that can't be true, because if this is a mosque, there's absolutely none of that going on. And secondly, I knew that was the women's area. And so I just turned to him and I said, in a way that I would probably never have said to a man from my own country or a Western man, I just said, watch yourself. To show him that I was aware that he was not behaving properly. And I turned to take a picture. And I had a pair of linen pants on. I since learned in India, you're not supposed to wear normal clothes. When you go to India, it's better to wear the salwar kameez, the typical Indian dress, which is, the very, very loose pants and the shirt that goes all the way down to below your knees, split up the side. And then a little bit of a shawl around your shoulders. And now I never understood, I knew that was the traditional dress, but I didn't know why until a friend of mine explained it. She said, you are not supposed to show, even if it's completely covered, you're not supposed to show your behind or your crotch. Even in pants, you're not supposed to show the shape of it.
Interesting.
Because that is too much of a temptation for men. So that is why you have this long shirt that covers you, and then on the other hand, you have this scarf because that hides the shape of your breasts, and it just sort of hangs across your chest. So, of course, I didn't know this. I knew you were supposed to be covered. I never wore shorts, and I never wore tank tops. But I think at that day I was probably wearing a short sleeve shirt and long linen pants, white pants, because, it's very hot. And I was taking a picture, and all of a sudden I felt this same hand, this same swinging arm, although we weren't walking, reach up, and it hit me right between my legs. And I don't mean on my ass. I mean between my legs. But it was very brief. And I turned around and I said, Tiffany, this was not an accident. You can't keep lying to yourself and saying that this guy is just accidentally touching you. And I turned around to sort of tell him off. And then I thought, wait a minute. I don't want to be with this person anymore. First of all, we were alone in this mosque, even though it's very open. There's huge arches leading into the outside. I turned him out immediately. I said, this tour is over. I'm not paying you. I want you to get away from me right now. And I started walking away. If he'd been smart, he would have disappeared. But he didn't. I think he wanted that money. So he followed after me. And he was like, no, you don't understand. I didn't mean to. You're confused. I look up. I see the Taj Mahal. And this is one of the most beautiful things in the world. And I've traveled quite a bit, and I don't think I've ever seen anything, as far as a building, that has been made by a man that is that beautiful. And I'm counting all of the churches of Italy. It is incredibly beautiful to see, from the outside anyway. And I thought, whenever I think about the Taj Mahal, this is what I'm going to think about. And I felt a little bit sorry for myself, and I started crying, even though I didn't really feel like I'd been molested. I mean, it technically was a molestation, but it was very light. It was very brief. and so I started crying, and I started walking through this very crowded area, and I saw some Americans, and I tried to ask, or some, anyway, English speakers, I tried to ask people to help me, even though I didn't really know what I needed help with. And people just ignored me, and were very rude, and wouldn't talk to me. And they saw that I was crying, and that also upset me, because I thought, if a tourist came up to me crying, I would help them, And the guy keeps following me. Finally, I said, what am I doing? Why am I walking away from this person? I need to report this person. So I saw a guard, an actual uniformed guard, and I started to tell him what happened, but he didn't speak very much English. So he started to take me to the office of the administration. All the time, this tour guide is following us, and now he's talking to the guard, and he's trying to explain to the guard why I'm so mistaken, why I'm so confused. I end up inside the administrative office. There's a man or two in there, and they are obviously high up in the organization of the Taj Mahal, and they speak perfect English in business suits, very professional. And I'm still kind of crying, and I walk in, and the tour guide walks in right behind me, and he immediately, in English, starts trying to justify himself to this man who works there. And he says, oh, she doesn't understand. She goes confused. She's confused. And he turns, the man in charge, he turns and he says, in the most dignified voice, a lady does not cry for no reason. And so I sat down, and they actually took the guy away. So I didn't have to explain the story in front of him. And I started to explain the story. But when I got to the point where I had to tell him what he said to me about this is the area for the I couldn't say it. I couldn't say it because, not because I couldn't say it to a man. I would have had no problem saying it to an American man or an Italian man. But it was because I know how delicate that relationship is between men and women in India, and how women are expected to be, very modest there. And so I didn't want to say this to him. And so he went and he got one of his colleagues, who was a woman who was even higher up than him. And I ended up sitting down with her, and I explained the whole thing. And I said, listen, I don't want to make any trouble. I don't want to press charges against this guy. But I think you should know, because I don't want some other tourist, maybe someone younger and more vulnerable, to have an even worse situation than I've had. And she said, I appreciate that, but we want you to press charges. Will you press charges? And I said, on one condition, because it was getting kind of late in the afternoon, and I was leaving the next morning. And I said, I need to visit the Taj Mahal. I need to see it. And so she said, okay, well, we have one of our official tour guides. He will take you around, and then you can go to the police office and you can make the report. So first I go, and with this very nice tour guide who was, he was definitely more prepared than the other. And he walked about a meter and a half from me. He wouldn't get near me. And
he's been warned.
Yeah, at a certain point, he turns to me and he says, I guess his curiosity got the better of him, what happened with the other tour guide? And I said, he behaved inappropriately. And he said, after a pause, how am I behaving? And I said, of course, absolutely fine. And it was a great tour, and he used his little flashlight to show me how the marble and the stones in the Taj Mahal are translucent. And that's what makes it so beautiful, because it absorbs the light of the sun. So if it's sunset, it's pink. If it's a pink sunset. Anyway, it was a great tour. I end up in the police station giving my report. I had written it all out. I had signed it. At the end of my little meeting with these policemen, right before I was about to go, I couldn't help it. I was so curious. I said, what's going to happen to this man? And they looked at me like I was kind of stupid, and they said, oh, he's in jail. So
He's still in jail today.
I met a friend who had lived in India for a while, and she said, the way it works in India usually is if it's a small crime like that, they don't send them to jail very long, for maybe a couple weeks, but because they don't want people to try to go to jail on purpose because they can get free food and lodging there, they beat the crap out of them before they're taken to jail as a detriment. So the guy was probably beat up and taken to jail. But if it stops him from molesting, some 16-year-old girl who doesn't have the wherewithal to stand up for herself, then it's definitely worth it.
So you feel good about it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it was a bad experience, but now it makes a great story.
Did the woman, when she said that she wanted you to press charges, did she tell you why she did?
No, she didn't. But I assume it's because one of India's biggest industries is tourism. She probably realized that if people start to talk, some girl who got molested, quote unquote, at the Taj Mahal by a tour guide goes around the world and tells the story, maybe people will start thinking that India is a dangerous place to visit. And so
do you think that people now think that India is a dangerous place to visit?
Not because of my story, but because of, unfortunately, what's been going on and what we've been hearing in the news in the past year. Which is serious, and I always wanted to go back to India after that trip. I had such an amazing time, despite that, and a couple of other unpleasant situations, none of which were quite that bad. I've always wanted to go back to India, but I have to say, I'm thinking twice about it now, not because of what happened to me, but because of what I've heard in the news lately.
Yeah, all the rapes and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear about your story.
Well, unfortunately, my story doesn't have such a good conclusion if you count having somebody beat up and sent to jail being a good conclusion.
Although I hope it also didn't include molestation.
Well, I'll let you be the judge. And we have to leave it there. Hey, it's Katy, coming to you from my window above a late night crowd that's out dining at the pizza place downstairs. And we're not leaving it there just because I'm so nervous for you to hear my story. I want you to hear it. We're leaving it there because of limitations on our own website. However, we will be uploading the second half of this episode within the week, if not within moments from when you hear this. So be sure to make sure you download both episodes of Assault and give us your feedback. bittersweetlife@mail.com. Thanks for tuning in.